Hello chess friends and welcome to this out of chess channel and welcome to the Airthings Masters tournament in 2020. We have reached now the semi-final stage, and the cool thing about the semi-final stage that basically the sharpest players have stayed in the tournament. Sharp play has been rewarded in this tournament. No pragmatics could work. You have seen Magnus Carlsen tried to play his positional pragmatic style against Dubov. It simply didn't work, and in my opinion, really the most attractive players stayed in the tournament. We have Daniil Dubov, Teimour Radjabov, Levan Aronen, and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Maxime with his sharp Sicilian, with his sharp Najdorf Sicilian. Levan Aronen always with tricky and sharp opening lines in any openings, similar to Daniil Dubov. Daniil Dubov basically is searching for attacks in every game, and Teimour Radjabov also with sharp lines. He played many times the King's Indian, which I think many of us wouldn't dare to play, at least in the top grandmaster level. We didn't see so many times the King's Indian, so Teimour Radjabov played it anyway. So in my opinion, really attacking play has been rewarded, and it's a great thing for us, of course. So we are starting now the semi-final stage with a great game between Daniil Dubov and Teimour Radjabov. It was really intense game. Here, let's check out the game. E4 played by Daniil Dubov. We have c5, knight to f3, we have knight to c6, so far the Sicilian. After d4, c takes d4, knight to d4, and now comes e5. This is the so-called Sveshnikov Pelican Lasker Sicilian. It's of course a very bad decision sometimes to leave some weaknesses, but it has of course its own ideas, and I think in the future we could also try to study it. I will maybe create now this opening from Black's perspective as an opening preparation against e4, because Magnus Carlsen, I think, played this opening, or at least similar lines of this opening, and I think we could really study it, because you see now also how great this opening can be. After the move e5, we have knight to b5, and now comes d6. Okay, let's stop and evaluate this pawn structure. This pawn structure here, when we leave this backward pawn and this weak square on d5, it's the so-called Boleslavsky Hall pawn structure. It's simply called as that, and the problem, of course, of Black is that Black is left many times with a bad bishop. This is a bad bishop here on f8 because it's blocked out by its own pawn, and the problem is you cannot advance the pawn on d5 and it prove the bishop's activity. What White is searching always here for are positional trades of pieces. So basically White is searching always for positional trades of pieces of any piece that can protect the d5 square. So for instance, this bishop could be protector of the d5 square. So we're maybe searching for trades of pieces of this bishop against this bishop. Also the knight on f6 could be also protector of the d5 square, so that's why White is searching also sometimes for positional trades of pieces with the move bishop to g5 and then bishop to f6. Then when we got rid of any defender of the d5 square, then we're trying to cement one of these knights on d5, and this knight would be a monstrous knight because it couldn't be kicked away by any minor piece in the continuation of the game. So it is a very nice idea for White to go into these lines, but there are of course also some counterattack possibilities for Black, how to prevent these ideas, and I think Teimour Radjabov played really great ideas of the Pelican or Lasker's Sveshnikov Sicilian here. After the move d6, we have knight to c3, we have a6, that's the main line. We have knight to a3, we can notice now b5 is also a threat, so Black can expand on the queen side and threaten even the move b4, which leaves, I think, Black a little bit of time. Black has time to regroup. That's the most important thing because of this move a6 b5. We have b5, and now see White has to react and place the move knight to d5. In the game, we have knight to f6, bishop to g5, and now bishop to e7. Taking out the bishop here, it's of course possible, but now after queen to e7 and maybe something like bishop to e2, castling, and if you try for instance to play a battery, queen to d2 and then rook to d1, still I think this pawn can be protected with rook to d8, and we could search then afterwards for ideas h6, g5. So far I think White should never take this bishop out, because you're giving up a good piece here. It's of course a good knight here on d5 against the bad piece. It's the bishop on e7, because we have said that the bishop is blocked out by its own pawn. So that's why we go on to our first strategy that I've explained. We're getting rid of any defenders of the d5 square. So that's why here Daniil Dubov played the move bishop to f6. getting rid of the defender of the d5 square. We have bishop to f6 and now c3. Very important move because we are not allowing also some outposts for black here. If black creates dynamics, for instance, if after knight to d4, maybe after potential trade of pieces, if this pawns get to roll somehow, then it's very dangerous, because then of course with the bishop pair, if black finds activities with the bishop pair, then it could be very dangerous for white. So how to play against this outposted knight? Basically, one of the main ideas whenever you see that your opponent has created an outpost around one particular square, it's simple. The simplest idea is to get out of the range of this knight. So you should search for this square somehow. You should go around this knight. So that's why after the move bishop to f6 and c3, we have bishop to g5. You see, we're getting out of the range of this very dangerous knight, and we have at least a new activity with our bishop. At least the bishop is not so bad anymore, although now white can play on a strategy how to play against the bishop, against the darker bishop. We're getting also out of the range of this bishop, so basically white will maneuver all of the pieces somehow, maybe to d1, and then this bishop would aim into nothing. Here it doesn't have a good attack. For instance, nothing is there on c1, d2, e3 or f4, so the darker bishop is not attacking so much. So that's why we have seen now so far the common strategy of this Boleslavsky whole setup and of this Pelican Sicilian. After the move bishop to g2, knight to c2, we have rook to b8. What pardon me, Teimour Radjabov is preparing here is, after potential a4 move, then we could proceed with the b4 continuation. That's the most important thing to support our queenside attack, because we have played so far on the queen side with this minority attack, with this 2 versus 3 situation, which is, I think, a very important idea to recognize from black's perspective. What we want to do with the minority attack is to create some kind of weakness here, to provoke maybe a weak square or a weak pawn position. Then maybe afterwards, if the position allows it, maybe even to occupy the d4 square, and maybe finally get this bishops active. So in the game h4 played by Daniil Dubov, very sharp line. Here I think Teimour Radjabov makes a slight inaccuracy. He plays bishop to h6. I think you can take. After bishop to h4, maybe a4, we can take, b takes a4, knight to b4, maybe something like knight to b4, c takes b4, and bishop to d7, maybe trying something like bishop to b5 to cement our bishop on this very active square. It is playable. What's the idea about this pawn sacrifice on h4 is, if you, for instance, castle, then you risk some queen to h5 ideas, double attack on the bishop, and also a checkmate threat on h7. But I think this could be playable. I think a great player like Teimour Radjabov would find a way into the game out of this mess. But he played bishop to h6, a more pragmatic line, a more firm line in the game. Bishop to e2 played by Dubov, and now casting by Radjabov. We have bishop to g4. As we said in the beginning, we're getting rid of any defender of the d5 square, so the bishop could come here. So we're trying to get rid of the bishop pair, and continuing the game with a powerful knight here on d5 against maybe not such a good bishop here on h6. But here Teimour Radjabov plays a great move, bishop to e6. If you want to trade off the bishops, that wasn't played in the game, but after f takes e6, you see the knight gets kicked away, maybe to e3, and we could now search as a long-term plan here a d5 pawn breakthrough. That could be our main goal, to simply push the pawn towards the center and getting really a nice central pawn storm with our pawns. So this bishop could have then finally good activity. We should regroup somehow, so that's why taking here the bishop is not an option in the game. Daniil Dubov played king to f1 in sort of a stockfish style, but it's not a surprise anymore. When Dubov is playing these lines, he's trying really to search for attacking possibilities. Here queen to d7 was played, bishop to f5, and now king to h8. There is a problem. You cannot take bishop to f5 after e takes f5. If you try queen to f5, then you get a very tricky move. Really nice tactics that Dubov has prepared here. Knight to b4. If you take here knight takes b4, then you get a fork on e7. Even if you try to get back somehow, maybe with the queen to defend this here, if you try something like queen to d7, again knight takes c6 followed with knight to e7. So very sharp line by Dubov. After move king to h8, we have queen to h5. Now comes e takes f5, we have e takes f5, and now f6. Okay, and here I think it's an equal game. Still, white has this powerful knight, but I think Teimour Radjabov has defended this position very, very good. He has now also opportunities to get this knight somehow into the game. He could play something like knight to e7, challenging finally the knight, and still continuing maybe with this minority attack on the queen side. So we have rook to d1, supporting this very important knight on d5, a5. We have rook to h3. Rook to e8, and now rook to d3, and now comes e4. This is a good move because it gives now new attacking possibilities for black. We could also now find a good square for our knight, because our knight on c6 here was a little bit out of game. Here the bishop still has a good activity. At least it restricts some rook activity here on d2 and similar stuff, or maybe on c1 in the game. Dubov tried here very, very sharp move, knight to f6, but this move was basically a mistake. Rook to g3 I think is much, much better, at least regrouping somehow. Still maybe an equal game. Then we could maybe try knight to e3, sort of a blockade. This could be, I think, still a firm setup here for white. But Dubov, as an attacker, he's always searching for sharp lines. Knight to f6 is not so good, because we can simply take rook to f6, and now after rook to d6, rook to f5. Here Radjabov makes a mistake. A better idea is simply to take rook to d6 is a possibility, because after rook to d6, what Dubov has calculated probably is that the queen gets deflected from the rook on e8, but still we can play queen to c8, and this is a much, much better position. We have an extra piece, and I think this is completely winning. If you try again rook to e6, we can even take f takes e6, queen to e6. This is also playable, and this is simply losing for white. So Dubov played again a sharp line. After the move rook to d6, here Radjabov took rook to f5. Okay, it's still a better position for black. After rook takes c6, we have rook takes f2. At least Radjabov grabs a pawn. We have king to f2, and now queen to c6. This is still a slightly better position for black. Black has this very, very annoying pawn on e4, can't push it even further, so the king is endangered. And although here Daniil Dubov has this 3 versus 2 situation on the queen side, it's still very dangerous. The king has to move. You lose many tempi in order to improve your king's position. You still need many tempi to improve your knight's activity. Now this pawn, I think, on e4 is something that bothers white in the continuation of the game. So king to g1, we have b4. Very nice idea here by Teimour Radjabov. He continues simply with his main plan, this minority attack, this 2 versus 3 situation on the queen side. C takes b4, a takes b4, knight to b4, but now queen to b6, a very nice check, and after king to f1, we have rook to f8. So far, the problem is now the rook is hanging. The problems for Teimour Radjabov are the back rank problems. He hasn't created breathing spaces with moves as g6 and similar stuff, so that's why he has to be careful. Here rook to f8 was played. We have a3, cementing the knight. Maybe a better idea is here to play knight to c2. You have to be fast now. You have to regroup. You have to move your pieces towards the king side, because the king on h1 is very endangered. What we can notice here are the dark square problems, and black has still here the dark square bishop, so that's why maybe knight to c2 should be played, although you're giving up maybe a pawn. But now after queen to f5, you see you cannot take. You have the back rank problems. Maybe black could play something like rook to e8, but again we can take out this pawn, and black has to play rook to f8, and this is, I think, playable. Maybe here we can also take out this pawn. Afterwards it would be probably a drawish position. So, but in the game a3 was played, which was kind of a loss of tempo. We have e3 by Radjabov, simply pushing his pass pawn. We have queen to e5, queen to g6, knight to d5, and now queen to c2, attacking the rook. And now comes rook to g1. This was a new mistake by Dubov. In my opinion, I would have played this move for sure, and I think 99% of any player would play the move rook to g1 because you have to play compact position around the king. The king is endangered. Rook to g1 seemed to me in the beginning really like the most natural move, but the correct move here is to play rook to d4. After something like queen to b2, we can build this battery. That's the most important thing. We can always stop this progress of the pawn, and we are threatening also some queen to e8 ideas with some checkmate threats. So here maybe something like after queen to a3, knight to e3 can be played, and here after trades of pieces, this should be again a draw. So Dubov missed this line. He played rook to g1, which allows now a queen to f move, queen to f2 move here for Teimour Radjabov. There are now some tactical threats with e2, then queen takes g1, and then e1, the promotion. These are tactics that we always should search for. So it's not possible so far because the queen is on the e file, but as a long-term plan, you should always memorize this. So queen to g1, and then e2, e1, a new promotion of the queen. Very, very nice attacking formation now for Teimour Radjabov. Here black is much better. Queen to e7. We have e2, knight to c3, which was again a mistake by Dubov here. After the move knight to c3, maybe I'm not sure where to go with this knight, but again, it seems to me that this knight gets simply too much to the queen side. The knight should be maybe moved somewhat towards the king side, but it's still a bad position. I think I'm not seeing here really good lines in the game. After move knight to c3, we have now really a winning continuation here for black, and there are basically many moves that black can play. Everyone is basically winning, but here Teimour Radjabov played, I think, the most attractive way to win this game. And you can also pause the video and search for at least one winning line. It's a really intense position, and Teimour Radjabov, of course, a sharp tactician sees this kind of things, and he played really an outstanding move. It was the move bishop to g5. So if you take with the pawn, then you get checkmated. Here queen to h4, and if you take with the queen, like Dubov did in the continuation of the game, then we have the promotion of a new queen here to e1. We have rook to e1, queen to e1, king to h2, and now h6, here kicking away the queen. We have queen to g3, here queen to c1 by Radjabov, queen to d6 by Dubov, but now the rook comes very active in the game. Rook to f1, we have queen to d8, queen to king to h7, we have queen to d3. Again, a new check, but now after knight to e4, this wasn't good. Maybe again trying this move, queen to d8, at least some kind of perpetual, but now after knight to e4, the game is really over, because king to rook to h1, the king has only one square, and now Teimour Radjabov can take another pawn, and this is completely winning in the game. Queen to d8 again, king to h7, we have queen to d3. Now queen to e5, very important move, because they are now on there is first a check, but also there are not so many good discovered attacks anymore possible, so the king could maybe escape. First a check here, king to g4, and now queen to e6, king to f4, and now rook to h4. Really a bad position here. Rook to g4, again king to f3, we have queen to f5, here queen to f4, and here after the move queen to d6 in this position. Dubov resigned. You cannot take because of the pin, and the queens are traded off, so it's lost here again for Dubov. So incredible game. Teimour Radjabov won the first match game with a clear result, with 2 wins and only 1 draw against Daniil Dubov in the day 1. So still Daniil Dubov has opportunities to equalize maybe the result in the day 2 of the semifinals. We'll see what will happen. So far, I think Teimour Radjabov really outplayed the attacker Daniil Dubov with great performances, and I think we can hope for some more great games in the continuation of this very nice event. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. If you want to see more games from the Airthings Masters tournament, check out my playlist so far. Here's the link. And if you want to see the best chess games of all times, check out my best chess games of all time series. Here's also the link. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.